Okay, you're all set.
All right. Thank you so much, Kiki. Wonderful to be here with you. Wonderful to be here with you all. Um, I too am beaming in from Ohlone land, unceded Ohlone territory up in Berkeley. Eve, she, her, and really happy to be here with you all. Actually, my colleague and dear friend, Fresh Love White, was intending to be here today and wasn't able to because of a bunch of things. So I'm stepping in. Love and I teach LGBT retreats together. Mostly we've been doing that in on the East Coast. However, we have a day long for all folks coming up. Um, and then we have a LGBT retreat at Big Bear in December, which I'm looking forward to. So very happy to be here. And I was telling Kiki before you all beamed on that the great Bodhisattva and teacher Joanna Macy passed away on Saturday at age of 96. So I'll talk more about her if for any reason you don't know who she is. But I do want to say that I'd like to dedicate, right at the outset of our hour together, I'd like to dedicate all our beautiful intentions and hearts that bring us here to this circle to her spirit as it transitions to whatever happens next. And just so much gratitude for her work. And I'll talk a lot about her, but mostly today I'm going to be talking about what inspired her work was this realization of deep interbeing and interconnection. And so, with that in mind, for our meditation today, we'll do some mindfulness practice, of course. But after about 10 or so minutes of mindfulness practice, I'd like to lead you in a practice that Joanna wrote and led thousands of times in her life called the Web of Life. And then after we've done our meditation practice, I'll invite you to let me know how that landed for you. And then I'm going to give a talk on one of the Buddhist teachings on interconnection, which is dependent origination. And again, would love to hear how all this lands for you. So I'd love to have it be a dialogue throughout conversation. All right, so that's a lot of words to start. So let's go right into some practice. So, invitation of mindfulness practice is to access this other very innate way of knowing the world, other in the sense that it's not what we're conditioned to do. We're conditioned to be lost in thought. I think, therefore I am. Taught this from the very earliest moments. And we have this whole other way of knowing, which is, again, just natural to who we are, which is awake awareness. Not knowing just from the mind, but from the whole body. So feeling that you have a body, feeling it in the sitting posture or lying down or however you find yourself right now. And with awareness of body, among other things, there's immediate feedback or information about interconnection. We feel the contact with the surface beneath us and know what's happening there is the Earth's gravity holding this form close. Interconnection and support. And then also the sensations of breathing. Like a whale's blowhole in the midst of experience. This life-giving support. So the invitation of practice is to be here now, as Ramdas said. To be here now. may be helpful to stay with the anchor of the sensations of contact that the body has or the sensations of breathing. And then also just acknowledging the natural, very magnetic, deeply conditioned habit of coming back to thinking. Not a problem, just nature. And when we notice, we've already come back. So as soon as you notice coming back to body, breath, hearing, present moment phenomena, just gently returning and practicing gently and kindly with remaining for as long as we do. All right, so we'll sit in silence together for about 10 minutes and then we'll transition to Joanna's Web of Life meditation. Thank you. And we're going to move right into the web of life practice. And just let these words flow through. Relax your body as fully as you can. Feel your breathing in your lungs and abdomen. The oxygen ignites each cell, stirs it awake as it burns in the metabolism of life. Extend your awareness deep within to feel this energy, this vibration of life. And it's all around you too. Sustaining all the bodies that are here in this circle today, weaving us into the web of life. Imagine you can see interlacing currents like threads of light. See how they connect us and extend beyond us. Experience the great multiplicity of strands formed by countless relationships, woven of the work and food, the laughter and tears you've shared with others. They shape what you are. They hold you. Sense those interwoven threads and rest into them. The web sustains your bones and blood and skin, concocted so intricately out of the food you've eaten, grains, vegetables, fruit, and nuts. The soil that yields the grain for your bread, the boughs of the tree that bear apples for you, the hands that plow, sow, reap, and gather. They're all of your body now. Back through time, this web extends. Parents, great-grandparents, ancestors, giving you your coloring and features, your gestures, your tone of voice. The web extends back through countless generations, numberless ancestors, all the way back to ancestors we share. And back further to those with gills and wings. For it is of star stuff evolving that we're all made in the flowing of time. We are each a jewel in this vast net that called us into being. Each of us an irreplaceable gem, sparkling with awareness, reflecting the world. Sound of gull crying over the sea, sight of mountain rising, colors of sunrise, scents of pine and loam, excitement of a beautiful idea, the melody of a song. There's pain, too, coming in along the strands of the web. A friend with cancer, an oil spill coating the beach, a mother weeping for her lost children. Do not shut them out. They live in the web of this planet time. Open to the sorrows. Breathe them in so the channels may stay open for the flow of energy, of life and change. When we block the pain, we block the joy as well. There is power in the flowing of this fluid net. Love that has enriched us and love that we give. Feel the caring and love that flow through you. Open to the pulsing of the web, its murmurs, whispers, tugs. Through that vast network, all forms arose. Intelligence arose. It shaped you as it shaped the mockingbird and the deep diving trout. You are of it, open to all, unafraid, relaxed, alert. We are the universe knowing itself. To all living beings, we open now in this time of great hardship. We do not go alone. There is nowhere you can go where you're not held in the web that sustains all. Still sensing these connections through space and time. Take some moments of silence. Allow yourself to be just as you are, and allow your experience to be just as it is. Thank you for your presence and for your practice. And so I would like to speak more of this notion of interbeing, interconnection, and specifically the Buddhist teaching on how understanding interconnection can help us work skillfully to alleviate suffering. But before I do that, I just wanted to open it up for a moment in case anybody would like to share what that practice was like for you. Anything you noticed, how it landed. Yeah, and if you don't feel like, if you're in a quiet space and you don't feel like sharing this, 100% fine. I just wanted to open it up in case anyone wanted to say anything. Carol?
I love the part about you are a jewel in this web. That really touched me deeply. And I like thinking about all living beings as being jewels and remembering that when I'm interacting, right?
Beautiful.
Thank
That's
you.
great. Thank you. Okay, well, there'll be more opportunity to check in after the talk as well. Oh, great. Isra.
Oh, hi. Observing a feeling of calm and steadiness to my breath now, though it was a bit rapid during the practice at times. I found myself turning towards the um, mention of ancestors,
Mm-hmm.
curiosity, and that was cool.
Good.
Um, and and just the ending about equanimity with being in flow as things are.
Beautiful.
Just
Thank you so much.
feeling better after.
Yay. Yeah, but the Buddha's whole raison d'etre is the alleviation of suffering. And it's very helpful when we notice that practices or philosophies or ideas bring about calm. It's helpful to notice that because then it becomes something that we can return to. Thank you so much for that. Yeah, and regarding ancestors, that's a really, really rich inquiry. It can be very, very supportive. Maya Angelou talks a lot about how her ancestors accompanied her everywhere she would go, and this sense of never being alone. So, so beautiful.
Thanks, Eve, and everyone. So since we're talking about ancestors, I just wanted to mention that lately anyway, as I age, I'm starting to have like a different awareness about ancestry, and not in the best way. I don't actually have like a sense of comfort about who my ancestors are.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I did appreciate the part where just as the moment came when I started to feel like this is a little naive, it was the part about sorrow, recognition of sorrow. So the timing felt, I've started to like feel myself leaving the space. And then my ears pricked up when I heard the part about like acknowledging the sorrow of the mother who's lost her children. And, that's very real and
Yeah.
visceral at this point. So thank you.
Yeah, definitely. No question about it. And thank you for that. Yeah. Joy without acknowledging sorrow is, you're right, it's just straight up denial. And sorrow without accessing any joy is a straight path to burnout. We need joy. It's part of the universe and it's given to us as a way to refuel and replenish, not something to put to the bottom of our to-do list. It's all there. Yeah. Okay. Any other thoughts right now? All right. So, as I said, I would like to dedicate today to Joanna Macy, who was born in 1929 and just died this past Saturday. So she was 96 years old. She was Buddhist teacher, environmental activist, a scholar of Buddhism, general systems theory, and deep ecology. She wrote 12 books. And she created the work that reconnects, which is a very, very powerful tool to reconnect to both our deep grief about the unnecessary sorrow and destruction in this world, and also our gratitude and love for the world. And but she essentially created it as a way to work with social activists, but also just all people. And I wanted to share with you just a little story that she has, and just track the time because I have probably like 3 hours of stuff I want to say to you in about 20 minutes. But this is really neat. This is the story of how Joanna Macy, the kernel of what started her life work around all this study and depth. So it's 1965. She's a young mom with her husband, partner Fran, in India. Who Fran was working with the Peace Corps, so they're there with their 3 young children. She'd found a book about Buddhism in a locker at the Peace Corps library, and was entranced enough, and she'd met a nun, that she set things up so that her kids would be fine while she was gone, and she wanted to get on a train to go study with some Tibetan Buddhist monastics to learn about this stuff. So she gets on this train in Dalhousie, night train, and this is just what I'll read to you. The train station was a madhouse. What seemed like half of North India's population must have poured onto the one platform from my train. When the coach doors to the nearest third-class coach finally opened, the crowds at each door were 10 or 20 bodies deep, each person hell-bent on getting aboard. The crush pressed me so tightly I could barely breathe. I feared I would suffocate, yet the surging push left no option for escape. My arm with the water jug caught between bodies as they shoved ahead seemed to separate from me. I was sure I'd be dismembered. As I was rammed through the door, I started to panic. Over the shouts and din, I heard someone screaming. It was me. In the narrow aisle between the 3-tiered wooden berths, I started to cry. Then, from the maelstrom of bodies below, hands pushed me up onto the topmost shelf like jetsam tossed from the sea. Other hands threw up my bag and bedroll. Weak with relief and drenched with sweat, I cowered there under the ceiling. Directly beneath me, a large, loving family, unpacking an endless series of containers, generously thrust up wads of rice, curry, and melting banana. Accepting a chapati, I drew up my feet and disappeared behind a book. I wanted to effect as total a withdrawal as possible while the lights still permitted me to read. I wanted to banish from my mind the whole teeming carriage with its jabber and clamor and smells. A pencil marked my place in a chapter on Buddhism in a collection by Houston Smith that I found in the Peace Corps book locker for volunteers. The subject was the second noble truth, the cause of suffering, held to be tanha, or craving. Grateful that I could concentrate at all, I reread a paragraph that tugged at my attention. Tanha is a specific form of desire. The desire to pull apart from the rest of life and seek fulfillment through these bottled up segments of being we call ourselves. It is the will to private fulfillment. To let the words sink in, I would lift my eyes every few lines and let my gaze wander down the packed coach. We strap our faith and love and destiny to the puny burros of a separate self which are certain to stumble and give out. Prizing our egos, coddling them, we lock ourselves inside. My breath deepened, each breath filling more of my body as if to steady me for a physical challenge. My mind stilled in wonder, for the thing that then occurred seemed outside its control. Suddenly I was no longer enclosed inside my own body. I wasn't outside it either. My body seemed to be silently exploding, expanding to the point where everything else was inside it too. Everything out there, each gesticulating, chewing, sleeping form, each crying baby, and the flickering, swaying carriage itself was as intimately my body as I was. I had turned inside out, like a kernel of popcorn shaken over the fire. My interior was now on the outside, inextricably mixed up with the rest of the world, and what I had tried to exclude, now at its core. She had this insight of deep interbeing, no separate self, which is a really central but hard to grok uh, teaching of Buddhism and experience of practice. She had that experience, then it informed the rest of her life, helping people to begin to connect that we are not separate selves and that this is a moral universe, how we behave and our speech and actions. If we are hurting or excluding others, we are hurting and excluding ourselves. And same with the earth body herself. And so this was Joanna's wake up moment. And it's not too much, it's got parallels with the Buddha's wake up moment. So the Buddha himself had been raised with intense sensual pleasure and acquisitional values, not unlike Western culture. This belief that happiness comes from pleasant experience. He'd been raised with that intentionally because his father had been told by a prophet that his young son would either become a king or a spiritual teacher, and the father vastly preferred king. So he chose to raise his son with intense sense experiences, positive sense experiences, which didn't do what the king had hoped, because they don't do it for us either. Attaching or making, trying to create happiness through strings of pleasant experience ends up just creating more aggravation and sense of control and reactivity. It doesn't create deep peace, which the Buddha saw. Then when he departed, he saw suffering straight up in front of him, profound disease, deep old age and the struggle that comes with that, and a corpse. He saw suffering, and he said, and then he saw a renunciate, a mendicant, a traveling spiritual seeker. And he said, that's what I want to do. I want to understand. Obviously, my life up till now hasn't been the answer to alleviating suffering. So then he went on his quest. He discovered deep moments of peace, not unlike what he'd experienced in this other way through sense pleasures. But now it was moments of peace through concentration. But then you come out of concentration and you're back in life and the suffering is still here. So that didn't answer his quest. He joined what was probably something that preceded the Jains, Jains, right? The people, the religion that really works to cause no harm, harmlessness, which became part of the Buddha's teaching as well. But their practice at the time was not eating, trying to not breathe for as long as you could, basically trying to disidentify from the body by being really mean to the body. And that was doing nothing except making him sick and exhausted. So then he left that and ate, gift of a woman giving him some food, ate, replenished himself, sought to have clarity about what was going on. And then in the story, on his night of his birthday under the Bodhi tree, he goes through 3 watches of the night. And each of these watches informs this eventual awakening to codependent arising, that everything here is arising because of everything else, dependent origination. So the first was seeing how everything's arising and falling and arising and falling. He saw, the story goes that he saw lifetimes coming and going, his own, and then others. And in the second watch of the night, he saw how the kind of patterns that we create by how we are in the world, what we believe, how much generosity or lack of it we express, how much hatred or love, how these patterns that we create have momentum, and then they create the next moment. And that's the law of karma, essentially, of cause and effect, which is why he's the insight into that this is a moral universe, that we are creating either joy or sorrow depending on what we're believing and how we're acting and what we're saying, and things come and go based on that. He saw that. And then in the third watch of the night, he formulated his understanding of dependent origination, and specifically the Four Noble Truths. The Four Noble Truths, which is there is suffering, causative condition for suffering is clinging or craving. Clinging or craving can be ended, and thus suffering can be ended. But just saying that doesn't make it doable. So there's a path we need to take so that we can slowly, incrementally release our clinging and craving and thus suffer less. And that's the Eightfold Path. The Four Noble Truths have been described by Buddhist teacher Ayakema as dependent origination telegram style. Dependent origination is basically saying, because this arises, that arises. And Buddha's big deal was, how do we alleviate suffering? And he saw, because we cling to sense pleasures, wanting to control reality, and especially clinging to this sense of separate self, this not seeing how deeply interconnected we are, and then the harm that we cause because we're trying to grasp through greed and hatred onto what we think are sense pleasures, and we create so much harm, and then we're also creating really bad karma for ourselves out of ignorance. That's all part of this interconnected web. So he said, we can see this interconnected web, and we need to kind of reel back to what is a condition that precedes suffering that's workable. Like, for example, when the light is on, there's a bunch of different things that are causing that light to be on. The electric company, the light bulb, the wiring, a lot going on with the light. A lot of different conditions creating the light being on in your room right now. What's a condition that are out of those many conditions of the light being on that you can work with in order to turn off the light? One of those conditions is the light switch. Much easier to deal with than protesting at the electric company or bashing your lamp with a baseball bat. Just this one thing of the light switch, that's a condition that is causing the light to be on that we can then just switch and it'll go off. So there are many different conditions that go into suffering. One that's consistent and that the Buddha decided, and you can decide this for yourself in your own explorations with practice, is the most workable, is this habit of clinging or attaching that we have. So we're already at 12:49, so I'm just gonna very briefly share screen and quickly talk you through this. Now, if you are familiar with this will, just be more on this topic. And if this is not something you're familiar with, this is a little tiny drop of this information. And I want to say that a Buddhist scholar American Buddhist scholar once described the 12 links of dependent origination as a mysterious rune. So it's to me, it's a lot of information, but It's really the Buddha's deep insight that caused the Four Noble Truths that sent him on his whole 45 years of teaching and everything that happened since then. We're on interconnection. So are you seeing this? Yes, okay. All right. So the first sort of causative factor, so you see that down here, the last one is suffering. And the Buddha describes suffering as aging, death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair. We know more. There's more. He knew more too. He described many different things in the course of the suttas. But this is sort of a umbrella term for just some of the ways we suffer as humans. And there's a lot of ways to interpret this, and sometimes it's interpreted as a treatise on reincarnation. You know, a lot of these things here happen before we're born, and then they inform us in present day. But the way I'm going to describe it briefly now is just in a day in the life. Okay, so down at the foundation of all of this, all of these conditions for suffering is ignorance. Ignorance in just the sense of an innocent not knowing, not seeing, not being clear about what's going on here and what leads to peace. And, you know, spoiler alert, what the Buddha is saying is what's going on here and what leads to peace is this realm is an impermanent, imperfect, and impersonal arising and falling of events. And in order to both experience more peace and also eventually come to complete release and freedom, we need to be cultivating clear perception, which we cultivate with effort and mindfulness and concentration. And we need to be cultivating a vast compassionate heart, because everything and everyone around us is ourself. Everything and everyone around us is impermanent and vulnerable and needs to be seen and held with spaciousness and compassion. And not, which compassion doesn't mean being a doormat. Compassion can mean clear, fierce courage, but still love down there as the motive, not hate. So we don't see that. What we see instead, the ignorance that we're pretty much all born into, is that we're separate selves, and the wrong understanding that happiness is gained through pursuing acquisitionally, pursuing pleasant experience. So we come into this kind of general ignorance, and then the next one that happens out of that ignorance is what's called formations, sankharas in Pali, which basically means, among other things, mental emotional patterns. We create these in childhood, and we create them in each moment. These things we believe, you know, about ourselves and the world that separate us out. So one that I work with a lot with people in my circles is a belief of not good enough, which is a natural kind of belief that can come up because of not having needs met. Or there can be a belief that anger is an effective strategy for managing situations, or whatever it is. So we get these kind of beliefs. Those are the formations. Consciousness is kind of how we are holding or meeting each moment, and they're flavored by our formations. Mind and body, then, you know, like say anger is one of my strategies, then my mind and body can hold a lot of angry patterns, contraction, heat. The senses, or the five senses that we know, plus thinking, come out of mind and body, conditioned by mind and body. Contact is when our senses meet the world, but again, biased by what came before, biased by what's already there, ignorance, formations, etc. And then feeling tone in the context of moving towards suffering is pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral, which is the sort of the taste of experience when we first meet it. You can know that something is pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral with a mindfulness. You feel it, or you just know it anyway because it's so obvious. But feeling tone is also, it's conditioned by contact, by our senses meeting the world. And then depending on what's happening there come craving and clinging. If the feeling tone is pleasant, we want more of the thing. And if it's unpleasant, we want to push it away. That's craving, the clinging, the grasping and the pushing away. And then clinging, once we've got the thing, we repeat it. Becoming, we eventually can begin to create a sense of self around it. Like, oh, I'm an addict, or I'm an author, or whatever it is. I'm a Buddhist. I'm a, these are me, this is me. I, me, mine. Birth is the full flowering of the identity of self. And then suffering comes because none of this is what's actually happening. What's actually happening is the arising and passing of phenomena due to many causes and conditions. So eventually everything we've identified as self, whether it's, our bodies, our thoughts, our minds, all the things, our emotions, our works of art, our homes, it all passes. And these are just a few examples. And or if you really kind of dig into this teaching and break it down, it applies to any phenomena where suffering is the result. So where our practice helps massively is mindfulness interrupts formations and ignorance. Radical kindness interrupts any kind of aversive reactivity. Mindfulness can allow us to see feeling tone, and then we don't go to craving, or even we can observe craving and choose not to act on it. Any place in this whole causative list where our practices of mindfulness, concentration, restraint, kindness, generosity, truthfulness, where our practices come, they all disrupt this list. And then we feel more peace. And that's the Buddha's whole point, is that as we begin to work with this foundation in an innocent ignorance, as we begin to work with it and deconstruct it, we find more and more freedom. And I'd stop there and just ask for a couple of, if anybody has anything they want to quickly say before we close.
I'm trying to wave.
Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Oh, wow. Thank you, Eve. I'm literally, um, I'm shaking. I'm blown away. That was incredible. You encapsulated so much so succinctly and so powerfully. I just really thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Oof. I'm up here. Actually, I told you I was camping at Big Bear, and so I'm sort of on a retreat. And I have been just wondering this very thing. Why am I stuck in certain patterns? And really looking at it and kind of going, I noticed the pattern, but now I need to know the way out of it. And I think you've given me some real insight to work with as I continue. And I thank you.
Oh, you're
Um,
so welcome.
yeah, no, thank you. I also would be interested to know, and this is just wondering if you do personal consults, like one-on-one.
Yeah,
Can you
I
put the
do. I
information?
do. And I'm co-teacher for Insight Berkeley too, so you could come any Thursday night.
Okay.
Yeah, but just go to my website. It's there. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to turn it over to Kiki because of the time. I apologize, everybody. I kind of lost track there.
Sorry about that, Isra. I saw that you had your hand raised. Yeah, thank everyone for being here. I did just want to slide all of Eve's info back into the chat so that you are able to find her as you need. So you'll see the website. There's 2 retreats, one coming up a day long online with Eve and Fresh Love White on August 3rd, as well as a 5-night residential retreat up in Big Bear in December. So definitely please check those out.